Welcome to Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. On today's show, we meet Father Eugene Stenzel. He has created an amazing grotto at his home. Norbert Sonic shares his talent for designing predator-proof birdhouses. We even get a rowboat ride from him on a local slough to look at wood duck nests. And we'll visit with members of the Wells Historical Society to learn all about the Wells Depot restoration. Stay tuned for Cities on the Move. Father Eugene Stenzel is a creative builder who has added a grotto to his home. Let's check it out.
I am Father Eugene Stenzel, and I'm from Wells, Minnesota. That's my hometown. I'm a retired priest. I just retired in January of this year. As a small kid on the farm in the summertime, I used to kind of diddle around in the rock pile, and I would play with the rocks as a kid. And so I've been doing this for 60 years. So then eventually I learned how to make cement, and I started putting the rocks together with cement. And over the years it has grown from that. It's an area that's covered with rock gardens, flower gardens. Besides the rock gardens, as I got older, I realized I need to do something more practical. So I started to build a house. The house took me, I allowed myself 20 years to build it, but I finished it in 10. Most of it's fieldstone, local fieldstone. I'd say 99% of it's all local fieldstone that farmers would bring in, or I'd go get a pickup and haul them in and build with the stone. And a lot of the things I first built, I would break the stone. So I would sit for weeks on end breaking stone with a stone hammer. But about 3-4 years ago, a man from Mankato gave me several ton of pink quartz. And so I'm building right now like stone pillars out of them, which will be just like huge fern stands, maybe 10 feet high. And the little girls that live next to me, they call it their princess towers because they're pink. They think they look like jewelry. I always felt if I could imagine it in my mind, I could build it. And so I did. Different things that I would imagine I could build. And I never had any plans for anything. There were no plans for the house. There were no plans for anything. It was just through imagination and then putting it together. My nephew and his oldest son, Sam, my nephew's name is Matt, they've done some work with stonework, and I've taught them how to do it. They've taken my dad's old granary and turned it into a cottage. And on the cottage we built, I showed them how to build a fireplace, kind of like, or a chimney that would look like you see on Lincoln's log cabin, kind of. So Sam and his dad, Matt, worked on that chimney together, and it's finished. And so they found it's not that hard. They're learning how to do it. So the next generation is going to take over. I enjoy doing this because when I'm finished building something, I've accomplished something. I can see what I've done. And also physically, it's relaxing, it's hard work. I'm not a hunter, I'm not a fisherman, I'm not a golfer. This is what I do for my own entertainment.
Well, today we're going to talk a little bit about the history of the Wells Depot and the wonderful things that have taken place in the community of Wells to restore this building. We have a couple of special guests. We have Betsy Hermanson and we have Isla Teskey. Thank you so much, gals, for being here.
It's nice to be here.
All right. Well, let's start a little bit about trains and Wells. They've gone together for a long time. Betsy, can you give us a little history on the rail and the town of Wells?
Colonel Clark W. Thompson is actually who we call the founder of Wells, and he's a man who, after the Civil War, started the Southern Minnesota Railroad, building it from La Crosse. His intent was to go all the way across Minnesota. He got to Wells about 1870. So in the summer of 1869, actually, a few people met on this treeless prairie and designated the town site and chose the name of Wells, which was Colonel Thompson's wife's name. And the railroad came in 1870, and it's been a railroad town ever since.
Ever since, so they kind of born at the same time.
Right.
All right. And why was rail important to Wells in those early days?
Well, that was the way to get supplies into the new settlers, and it was also the way to get product out and into the cities and onto greater markets.
Mm-hmm. And the biggest product, I'm assuming, in Wells was probably agricultural in those early days?
Actually, in the very early days, there were 3 cigar factories.
Oh, really?
There were sugar
Okay.
beets and various agricultural products, milk, butter, those kind of things were important.
Great. All right. And more recently, Wells still has tracks running through it. And how often do you see the train in modern times?
Sometimes every time you want to go across the track is how you see the. There are, I think, 2 freight trains for sure that go through daily, and there's a lot of switching as grain is loaded onto cars, and so
still
active.
A good presence there. All right. Isla, you're with the Historical Society, and there was some interest in preserving some of that history tied to Wells. Can you tell us a little bit about what started this project? When did you decide that, gosh, maybe we ought to do something about the depot?
Well, the decision was kind of made for us when the railroad decided that they wanted to demolish the depot that was built in 1903.
Okay.
And they had gone to the city council getting, you know, the necessary permits and so forth to demolish the building. And we went to the railroad and tried to work with them, saying, you know, can we, you know, work with you so that you don't demolish this building? Well, they wanted to put up a new building. And so we worked with them to find them a different location so that they could build a new building.
Okay.
And then they sold us the depot for $1.
Okay.
And it had not been maintained well at all. They had let it deteriorate because, you know, down the road they were planning on building this new building. And so a lot of work had to be done on the depot in order to restore it.
Now, what was the original purpose of a depot? It was built in 1903, you
This
said?
one was,
Yes.
It was a passenger and freight depot,
They did
and
both?
so
Okay.
there were at one time, I believe, 6 passenger trains going through town. So it was the hub of the city, really. There was a building right nearby that was a cafe, and many trains stopped during the day. Sometimes in the early days, an extra car was added to the train if it was going to Blue Earth or Winnebago or another town for a high school sporting event. So there'd be a car added for the fun.
To transport the team, no bus.
And the fans.
And the fans, okay, very good. And so the purpose of the new building that they wanted to construct, that they chose another site for, what are they going to do with that building?
That is already constructed. They built that right away in 2005, completed in 2006, and that's an office building, plus they have a maintenance shop in there.
Okay.
And so,
So still an active presence in
yes,
town?
yes,
Nice.
yes, they still have an
So
office.
restoration of a historic building is a challenge.
It's a long
challenge.
process.
Where did you begin?
We began when we found out about a grant that was given through the Minnesota Department of Transportation called the Enhancement Program Grant. And a lot of times that program is for bicycle trails, but in the grant it also lists depots. And they want a completed project. And so we met with them and told them what our idea was and came up with, you know, what it would cost, because they wanted the interior and exterior restored, which was a wonderful thing for us. The price tag was high, but you know, instead of going to this grant for one part of the building and another source for another part of the building, we got the whole thing done at once. And it was actually at 80% that they paid, and we had to come up with 20%. So when you start talking, it was over $250,000 that we got through the MnDOT transportation program. And then we got other funds through Minnesota State Historical Society, and we were actually in the state bonding bill, and we've begged from almost everyone we can.
And how was the community response? Because sometimes it does take that kind of rah-rah from the local folks to really kind of put the cap on it and make it happen.
We got a lot of local support from the community, and that's what the MnDOT wanted, was for us to concentrate on getting the funds raised for our 20% instead of, you know, looking at, you know, cleaning up this or restoring that. You know, they just wanted us to focus on our 20% so that they could make this whole process. And it was a 3-year process from when we got awarded the grant through MnDOT to when the work would actually start. So we had a 3-year window to, you know, prepare, and we had to do get an architect and so forth.
And did you have to restore or do any major construction to the building? Sometimes after a period of years, this has been tacked on or that's been changed, or what was your ultimate goal for restoration? Was it to make it back to 1903, or?
We tried to get it back to 1903 as much as possible, but with modern things along the way that we need to, as far as security and handicap accessibility, you know, things like that, and lighting. But we put on wooden shingles, which was the original shingles that were on the building. And actually, when we took over the building, there was only 2 layers of shingles on it. Now, this building was over 100 years old. It still had the original wooden shingles on it, plus 1 layer of asphalt shingles. And so, needless to say, it was in desperate need, and there was holes in the roof, and you know, and it was leaking in, and we had pigeons in the building, and I mean, it was in bad shape.
And so then what?
We had to have a vision.
And then we, some of the guys, Isla's husband and Mike, they actually went up on the roof and put tarp across it to save it until we get to the point of restoration. And so pretty soon that tarp is flapping in the wind. So we had one really ugly building, and now it's just beautiful.
Talk about some of the special touches, and that you look at those before and after photos, and it's just lovely what you've done. Talk a little bit about some of the painting and the wood treatment and the things that you worked on.
Well, what's so unique is that all the wooden floors are original. I mean, there were a few spots that had to be replaced or repaired, but it's all original wood floors. The ticket window is original. The only thing we had to do on the inside was they had actually put up a couple temporary walls to make it a smaller office so that they could heat it and air condition it. But so they just had to come back out. So there really wasn't a lot of structural change that we had to do, which was nice. It was more just, you know, redoing the ceiling where it had, you know, collapsed in, and replastering that. And there was some trim missing here and there, so that had to be replaced, and you know, they matched up as, you know, so it matched all the original, but a lot of it is original.
Okay. Did you have to do any major plumbing or heating and air conditioning, or had they accomplished that in the years since it was built?
No. We had to redo that. Originally, the building had a men's and a women's bathroom, and the architect very nicely was able to make one unisex bathroom and put the furnace in the other bathroom. So we didn't even have to build an extra room to house that. So.
Because it just has a crawl space underneath, and then, you know, an attic that there's not a lot of room up in the attic, just the way the roof is shaped. And so we were able to insulate both the crawl space and the attic very well. But we actually have 2 furnaces in there, one for the main area and one for the freight room, so that we can keep them different temperatures, and you know, it's more economical that way. But you know, so new furnaces that way, and you know, but plumbing, you know, some plumbing had to be redone, but it was mainly in the same spot that it was before, pretty close to it.
And did you hire out contractors, or was this volunteer labor that did these changes, or maybe a mix of both?
Through this MnDOT grant, this was all through federal money, and so we had to go with prevailing wages, and so all of this had to go under, you know, through the contractor, through, you know, our architect had all of this lined up, and we had to hire a general contractor, and then, you know, all of it had to be nice and legal.
All right.
So MnDOT didn't want us, they actually wanted us to concentrate on getting our 20% and not look at the, you know, donating the time.
All right.
That's where our volunteer hours were, in pancake breakfasts and food stands at our Colonel Day celebration, and selling T-shirts, selling crockery, selling mugs. anything we can think of to make
Yeah.
a few more dollars.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when was the project actually completed?
The project was due to be done in 2009. It didn't actually get started till the middle of August of 2009, and it was done on December 31st.
Just in time. Great. Well, now the community has this great restored building. What are your plans for it?
Well, our plans are a museum, and we've been putting out notice to the people in the community, do you have anything valuable? Our first and foremost, our priority is to have a railroad display, because that's who the town is, and that's what our building is, and that's our grant came through the Department of Transportation. So first we will work on reassembling railroad items and things people might have, and then future plans include many other things: early industry, recreation, bands that we might have had back in the past. What are some others?
The hospital, we don't have a hospital there now, but
We
the
did have
history
a
of the
hospital.
hospital and doctors that, you know, formed wells, and the city fathers. And
Okay. So until these pieces are located in the building, are you planning to use it for any community events, or you do have, you know, a summer festival and things that go on? Is there a plan?
we're holding our monthly meetings there, but otherwise we're just trying to, you know, get things lined up. We have some display cases that we got through a grant, and, you know, things like that.
Okay.
So just trying to gather things at this point and
Great.
start cataloging them.
Now, you're with the Historical Society, but you are a working person as well. Do you have a curator, or is this all being done by volunteers? Or
This is our volunteer curator.
It is volunteers, and we have had so many people come forth and say they have this little thing or that little thing, or they have some expertise. And so I also wrote a grant to get some software to help us in our acquisition and recording and cataloging, so that we want to get started on the right foot.
And can people still make contributions, financial contributions, to the upkeep of the building? I'm assuming you had this wonderful grant for restoring it, but there are ongoing costs of heating and maintenance and so on. And so are you looking for people to still support the building?
We are. We're looking for financial support in the form of donations or memorials. We have memberships available,
Okay.
Annual memberships for $20, you know, that ongoing support. We have about 100 members right now, but we're always looking for more. And, you know, like you say, there's always ongoing costs, and we don't want to stop with just this building either. And if we can continue on, like Betsy had mentioned, there was a cafe that was part of this depot at one time, and it's not attached, and it never was attached, but it's actually on the National Historic Register along with the depot, because it is part of the railroad.
Part of that story.
And so our eye is on that building
Your
next.
vision is extending. Great. If folks do want to help in some way, whether they want to make a contribution to the project, or maybe they have a piece of memorabilia that might be suitable for the museum, who do they contact?
They can contact Betsy, or we'll just give them a mailing address, because that's probably the easiest thing to remember.
Go ahead.
And it's just the Wells Historical Society, and it's P.O. Box 43.
43. I love
Wells,
small
Minnesota.
towns.
Yep.
All right, it's great. Well, if you folks in the Wells area have any specific memorabilia for the community related to the train or other community history, please get a hold of them. And for anyone else who enjoys history in general, or particularly the history of towns that were built by the railroad, be sure to get in touch with these folks and learn what you can about their personal history and their community. Thank you so much, gals,
Great.
for coming by
Thank
and
you.
share this
You're
story.
welcome.
Congratulations
Thank you so
on
much.
a project completed.
Thank you.
All right. Stay tuned for more Cities on the Move. Norbert Sonic decided he didn't really want to get dumped off his backhoe as he tried to clean out his purple martin houses. This led to an entire inventory of new birdhouse designs. Let's find out more.
Building birdhouses is the passion of Wells area resident Norbert Sonic. What began as a way to keep from being dumped off of a backhoe by his wife while maintaining purple martin houses has led to an improvement in housing stock for many area birds. We spent the afternoon with Norbert to learn more about how to sustain the local wildlife, especially the colorful wood duck.
My parents, mostly my dad, was the one that introduced me to the great outdoors, hunting and fishing, and it's been a lifelong thing of mine. The very first one we started building was a purple martin house. And the reason we started with the purple martin house is because the ones that are on the market now and are sitting up on a pole are usually too high to go up there with a ladder, so that people just ignore them. And because I'm in the excavating business, I'd have the wife run me up there with my backhoe to change the nesting material out of it, and I almost got dumped a couple times. So we come up with a better way of getting the martin house up and down, and we've come up with a compartmented birdhouse that's made out of plastic, and it's also insulated so that it's easy to maintain. One of the main things for maintenance of a purple martin house is to keep the sparrows and the starlings out of the undesirable birds, and because they're here year-round, the starlings and the sparrows, they start nesting before the martins do, before the martins arrive. And once the starling and the sparrow has established themselves, the martins will keep on going. So it's really important that every 3 to 4 days you maintain the house, go up there and throw out the undesirable nesting material so that you do attract the purple martin.
Once he solved the problem of the purple martin house, Norbert moved on to other birds.
We have a bluebird house also that we've put in operation and got that up and running, and that comes in 2 colors, brown or white, and there again we stress the white color because of the heat problem, and we've had the bluebird house up and running now for 3 years.
The wood duck is where Norbert really lights up about his work.
We have our wood duck house, which we're about to see here. Usually when they come to look for nesting, it's usually around the 1st of May, depending upon the temperature, of course. Once the ice goes out on the ponds and where they normally nest, that's when they start looking for nesting boxes. But a major problem with the wood duck house is that we're out there is they didn't make them predator proof. The thing was to mount them on a tree, and when you do that, you're just setting a picnic table for a raccoon. We've mounted on a 3-inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe, and it's just about impossible for the raccoon to crawl up that pipe. And because of the design of the wood duck house, even if they was be able to crawl up that pole, they would have to let go with their 2 front paws to reach up to grab something else to get into the wood duck house. And with the design of the house, from the outside dimension is 10.5 inches, plus it's 7.5 inches up to the hole. There's no raccoon that's got an arm that long that can reach up that high. We have the only insulated bird houses that are out there, and the reason for the insulation is not to keep the birds necessarily warm when they're nesting. It's to keep it from getting too hot. Once the temperature reaches over 106 to 112 degrees inside that house, why it cooks the embryo and the eggs die.
Norbert has tested his wood duck houses on a local slough with good success.
Out of the 5 boxes that we got in the background here, they average 10 wood ducks that hatch per season. So the DNR was here last year, and one of the officers said that there was an explosion of wood ducks on this pond, and I'd like to think it was because of our wood duck boxes.
In addition to Norbert's efforts, there are many local volunteers who closely monitor the wood duck population.
We have an inspection door on the side that you can take off with some thumb screws and monitor the eggs. And there's die-hard wood duck people out there that monitor these things every day. They've got cameras inside of them and thermometers inside of them, and yeah, they really get after it.
Wood ducks are found throughout the country.
We've sold wood duck houses from Delta, California, all through the southern states on up to Poughkeepsie, New York.
But in the end, it's the light in his granddaughter's eyes that brings the most enjoyment to Norbert.
It really paid off here, about 1.5 years ago. We had, my granddaughter was here, and she is 7, and the look on her face when them little ducks jumped out of that house was worth all the effort we put into it.
And now for the calendar of events. The Mapleton Town and Country Days will be held June 11th through the 13th. This 32-year-old festival brings history and fun together. Highlights include the Friday Demo Derby, Kitty Parade, Carnival and Bingo, Saturday's Antique Farm Machinery and Quilt Show, Parade and Fireworks, and on Sunday enjoy the Antique Tractor Pull, Pancake Breakfast, and more. For more information, call 507-524-4756. The Mankato Baltics will be hosting an 8-team tournament of 1860s vintage baseball games at Land of Memories Park on June 19th. Team play starts at 10 a.m. and teams will compete by 1860s rules and use 1860s style equipment. For more information or to register a team, contact Hugh or Vale at 507-546-3162. A few weeks ago, we talked about park development in Mankato, Minnesota, and on June 26th, the Riverfront Park grand opening event will take place and will include a free concert that begins at 1 p.m. and concludes at 9 p.m. The concert features Fish Fry, Billy and the Bangers, City Mouse, and Martin Zeller and the Hardaways. This event is free and open to the public. The event will take place rain or shine. For more information, call 507-389-3000. And if you have an event to share with our viewers, log on to ksmq.org and post it today. And also, if you have a story idea for Cities on the Move, email me at stephanie@ksmq.org. We would love to highlight your town next. Next week on Cities on the Move, we learn more about Lake Mills, Iowa. They have a delightfully restored country school, a talented watercolor painter, and a community-wide effort to energize the next generation of leaders in town. Please join us Tuesday, June 15th at 6:30 p.m. on KSMQ for another edition of Cities on the Move. I'm your host, Stephanie Passingham. Good night.
Production of this program is made possible in part through a grant from the Blandon Foundation.